Thanksgiving. My phone lit up with a message from my mother. Thanksgiving is family only. Find somewhere else to eat, 10 floors below. Through the glass of my office, I watched my family sweep into the lobby, laughing, confident, on their way to the private room at Harbor and Vine. They didn't realize every chandelier, every plate, every paycheck in that building carried my name. And with one call, I froze their perfect holiday in place. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, founder of Harbor and Vine Group here in Seattle. People know me as the woman who turned a rusted food truck into an empire. To critics, I'm a rising star. To my employees, I'm a steady leader who never accepts less than excellence. To my investors, I'm proof that grit and stubbornness can become a business worth millions. But to my family, to them, I'm still the afterthought, the expendable one, the girl who never quite fit their definition of success. That text wasn't just about dinner, it was about belonging. And in one line, my mother had declared I didn't belong. I stared at the screen as the words burned into me, and every old scar surfaced. I remembered being 12, sliding a hand-drawn menu across the kitchen table, while my brother bragged about debate trophies. No one noticed me. I remembered bringing home an essay I was proud of, while my sister showed off her perfect report card. She got applause. I got silence. Small cuts at the time. But over years, those cuts layered into something heavier. I told myself adulthood would change it, that proving myself in the world would shift how they saw me. 2 James Beard nominations, hundreds of employees, 20 million in annual revenue. I thought, surely, that had to count for something. But that text proved it hadn't. To them, I was still outside the circle, still less than, still optional. I pressed my palms into the edge of my desk and tried to steady my breath. Below me, the restaurant hummed. Staff adjusted wine glasses, polished silver, double-checked the reservations for the holiday rush. To them, I wasn't optional. I was the reason they had jobs, the reason the lights stayed on, the reason Harbor and Vine had become one of the city's hardest reservations to land. Out there, I was indispensable. Inside my family, I was invisible. The contrast made my chest tighten until I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I would not spend another holiday in silence. I would not let them erase me again. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage, though my hands curled into fists. It wasn't grief, though my eyes burned. It was resolve, cold, clear, unyielding resolve. Out of habit, I turned to my computer, telling myself maybe work would ground me. The reservation system glowed, rows of names and times. And then I saw it. Her name, Margaret Carter, party of 14, 15-course holiday package, private dining room. I blinked, thinking maybe exhaustion was playing tricks. But it was real. My mother hadn't just excluded me from Thanksgiving. She had booked my own dining room to host Thanksgiving without me. She was about to serve pride and performance to her siblings, her in-laws, her polished circle, inside the house I built with my bare hands. The irony hit like a knife. The woman who told me I wasn't welcome had chosen my house as her stage. The screen burned back at me. My mother's name, my dining room, my holiday. And that was the moment I knew the script had changed. I opened our reservation dashboard and saw my mother's name on a 15-course holiday package in my private dining room. Stay with me, because what happened next turned Thanksgiving into a reckoning. When I read my mother's text, it wasn't just the sting of exclusion. It was the echo of every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family dinner, where I was never quite enough. My brother Robert was the golden one, straight A's, captain of the debate team, destined for law school. My mother recited his awards like scripture, polishing his accomplishments until they gleamed. Grace, my younger sister, was the gentle one, quick to laugh, eager to please. Everyone said she'd be a perfect nurse. My parents basked in her sweetness. And me, I was the one in the kitchen, kneeling on a chair to reach the counter, experimenting with cinnamon and cloves, burning my fingertips on caramel that set too fast. I dreamed in recipes, wrote menus in spiral notebooks when I should have been memorizing state capitals. To me, it was a calling. To them, it was a phase. I can still hear my mother's sigh, the way she said the word cute. Cute when I brought out a tray of cookies I'd spent hours perfecting. Cute when I worked double shifts at a diner in high school to save for a food truck. Cute when I told them one day I'd own a restaurant. Cute as if it meant disposable, childish, temporary. But the thing about dismissing a dream is that sometimes it teaches you to hold on tighter. By the time I was 21, I had already worked more back-to-back doubles than my brother had ever studied for an exam. I learned what it meant to be bone-tired, to smell fryer oil in my hair, to cut onions until my eyes went raw. I learned that in this industry, one mistake can send a plate back and one plate can kill your reputation. Standards weren't optional. They were survival. Harbor and Vine didn't come from luck. It came from 1,000 nights of saying no to shortcuts. I trained cooks until their hands shook with fatigue. And then I trained them again. I demanded clean stations, clean ledgers, clean reputations. If someone showed up late, I sent them home. If a supplier tried to cut corners, I cut them loose. That's what it took to move from a rusted truck parked in an alley to the most coveted dining room in the city. So when I saw my mother's name tied to a 15-course package in my private dining room, I didn't think of revenge in the cartoon sense. No scenes, no screaming. My goal was sharper, colder. Not to humiliate, but to confront. To make them sit under chandeliers I paid for and face the daughter they tried to erase. The irony was almost laughable. They had told me to stay away, to find somewhere else to eat. And then they had chosen my house, my staff, my kitchen, to parade in front of relatives. They thought they were untouchable here, safe behind a reservation that looked like every other. But I knew something they didn't. The Whitmore party? Booked under a friend's corporate concierge. They thought that shield made them secure. They thought anonymity would hide whose table it really was. They were wrong. I picked up my phone. My heartbeat steadied, not frantic, but deliberate. I scrolled to one name, the one person I trusted to execute what I was about to do. I dialed my GM. Mark, my general manager, answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, professional, already running through holiday prep in his head. "Good evening, Emily. We're on schedule. The private room has been polished twice. The wine pairings confirmed." I cut him off. "Cancel the Whitmore reservation." Silence stretched across the line, long enough that I could hear my own breathing. Mark knew better than anyone that I didn't speak recklessly. When I gave an order, it came from calculation, not impulse. Still, his voice tightened when he finally replied. "That's a party of 12. Private dining, prepaid holiday package. Emily, we're 5 days out. Do you understand what that means? The revenue loss, the contracts, the reputation." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "I understand exactly. Cancel it." He exhaled hard. "If we cancel, we pay out the florist. We pay the musicians. We pay the overtime contracts. That room will sit empty on one of the busiest nights of the year. Word will spread that Harbor and Vine doesn't honor commitments. The press will eat us alive. Is that the risk you want?" I let his words settle. He wasn't wrong. Reputation in this business is everything. But reputation without dignity is worthless. "Mark," I said evenly, "I'll cover it. Double the cancellation fees, double the staff bonuses for the night. Give a free holiday dinner to every guest on our wait list who couldn't get a table. And when we talk to the press, we call it a no-fault logistics change, Not a whisper of blame. The brand stays clean. He hesitated, but I could hear the shift in his breathing. This wasn't spite. It was strategy. You're sure? I'm sure, I said. This isn't about money. This isn't about a plate of turkey. It's about boundaries. If they can erase me from their holiday, they don't get to use my house to stage their performance. Not without me. Mark's voice steadied. A soldier slipping into orders. Then I'll handle it. Everything will be documented. Every contract adjustment. Every refund. Every email. Legal will see. The trail is clean. Good, I whispered. Make it airtight. We ended the call. For a moment, the office was still, the city lights flickering against the glass, like 1,000 indifferent stars. I thought about all the years I had worked to keep Harbor and Vine untouchable. Every inspection passed, every critic won over, every supplier kept honest. And now, the greatest test wasn't a health code violation or a scathing review. It was my own family. I knew what they'd say when they realized what had happened. That I was petty, that I was vindictive, that I had humiliated them. But I also knew the truth. This wasn't vengeance for its own sake. It was justice. It was refusing to be erased again. Within an hour, the first ripples returned to me. Calls from colleagues, whispers from concierge desks across the city. The Whitmore party had tried to rebook, tried to throw their weight around, tried to flash connections. And every top room in town said no. 12 seats, holiday week. Impossible. The doors kept closing on them, one after another. I pictured my mother's face as the rejections piled up, the perfect facade cracking, her pride slipping with every, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we're fully booked." And for the first time in years, I felt the weight shifting, the balance tilting toward me. My phone lit up. Her name filled the screen. Then again, and again. My mother's caller ID lit my phone 68 times. I let it ring. By the next morning, the storm was already in motion. My mother's voice ricocheted across the city, hitting every maitre d', every hotel manager, every catering director she could find. She was frantic, calling in favors that didn't exist, pressing names that carried no weight. 12 seats, Thanksgiving week, private dining. Her polished image was crumbling with every rejection. I could picture her pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, hair falling loose from its bun. She had promised her brother, Edward, elegance. She had promised her in-laws a holiday worth bragging about. She had built the night up so high, she couldn't afford to let it collapse. And now, humiliation loomed like a storm cloud, threatening to drown her performance before it even began. Grace, my younger sister, reached out first. A text blinked on my screen. Mom told me what happened. Are you okay? I stared at it, torn between fury and weariness. Grace was kind in her own way, but kindness without courage is just decoration. She'd never once spoken up when I was cut down. She never defended me, never challenged Mom's favoritism. She smoothed things over, whispered sympathy, then stepped aside to keep the peace. I typed back 2 words. I'm fine. It wasn't the truth, but it was all I was willing to give. I could imagine her sigh of relief, happy to believe she had done enough with a single text. That was Grace, present, but never willing to bleed. My father was quieter still. Daniel Carter had perfected silence years ago. He knew who I was, what I had built, and he chose not to say it. He told himself he was protecting harmony, protecting marriage. In truth, he was protecting himself from confrontation. He'd watched me get cut out of celebrations, heard the dismissive words, and said nothing. And now, as my mother's panic spilled across the city, he said nothing again. But I wasn't silent. Not this time. When my mother finally reached me, her voice was sharp with urgency, but dressed in a fragile laugh. Darling, there's been a misunderstanding. Bella's, sorry, Harbor and Vine, canceled our reservation. Isn't that ridiculous? Surely you know someone who can fix this. I let her twist for a beat before I answered. My tone was calm, measured. I can help you, Mom. But there's a condition, her pause was telling. Condition? 15 seats, not 14, I said. If Thanksgiving happens in my house, I'll be at that table. Or there is no table. She went quiet, the way she always did when she felt cornered. Then she tried a softer tactic. Well, if we add a 15th, maybe we should invite Mrs. Ellison. She's practically family, always been close to us. That way, it won't feel forced. The words stung sharper than the text. She would rather seat a neighbor than her own daughter. She would rather hand that chair to someone with no claim, no history, than to me. That was her solution, to erase me a second time. When a seat at the table is offered to a stranger before a daughter, what does family even mean? I steadied my voice, letting steel slide beneath it. No, Mom. If that 15th chair is for anyone other than me, the room stays locked. Her breathing quickened on the other end. Emily, you don't understand how important this dinner is. I cut her off. I understand perfectly. And then I gave her terms in one sentence. The phone line crackled with my mother's silence. She had spent the morning clawing for a solution, and here I was offering one, on my terms. 15 seats, not 14, I repeated. If Thanksgiving happens inside Harbor and Vine, then I'm there. No exceptions. Her voice sharpened. Emily, you're being unreasonable. The table was planned for 12 plus Edward and his wife. 14. That's it. Adding another plate disrupts the symmetry, the menu, the service flow. I almost laughed. She was talking about symmetry, as if my team couldn't adjust a place setting. Symmetry isn't the issue, I said. You erased me. I'm offering you a choice. 15. Or nothing. She tried bargaining, her tone sliding between cajoling and commanding. What if we add someone else instead? Mrs. Ellison would love to come. She's been close to the family for years. That way, it doesn't feel like we're bending rules just for you. The words cut deep. I pressed my nails into my palm, forcing myself to stay steady. So, you'd rather give a seat at my table to a neighbor than to your own daughter? She stumbled, sensing the edge in my voice. It isn't like that. It's about appearances. If you sit with us after everything, it could look complicated. But if it's Mrs. Ellison, it looks gracious. I took a long breath, then let the words fall, cold and clear. Mom, if you erase me again, I'll donate this room tonight to a shelter's holiday dinner in your name. Every photo, every headline, every guest will know that Margaret Carter chose generosity. They'll never know it was because she couldn't face her own daughter. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but static. She knew exactly what I'd done. I hadn't threatened to embarrass her with a scandal. I had threatened to crown her with a halo she hadn't earned, one that would slice her pride in two. Because in her world, image mattered more than truth, and that was the one thing she couldn't afford to lose. Finally, her voice broke. Fine. 15. The word came out clipped, strained, like she had bitten into something sour. But we'll handle it discreetly. You'll join, but let's keep it subtle. No grand gestures. Subtle? I echoed. Yes, she said quickly, seizing control where she could. You can sit, but perhaps not at the head of the table. Maybe somewhere off to the side. Quietly, in the corner. No need to draw attention. My chest tightened, but not with hurt this time. With fury, cold enough to steady me. Quietly, in the corner, in my own house. After all the years, all the hours, all the scars of building this empire brick by brick, she still wanted me invisible. Understood, I said flatly, though my decision was already made. When the call ended, I sat in silence, the glow of the city lights flickering against the glass. She thought she had preserved her dignity. She thought she could cage me in, a corner and call it compromise. She hadn't realized yet that compromise was no longer part of my vocabulary. I turned to my reflection in the window, my face steady, my voice calm as I rehearsed the only instructions that mattered. I told my team exactly how to introduce me. They wouldn't. The days leading up to Thanksgiving blurred into a single rhythm of preparation. Every detail mattered because this night would not be ordinary service. This was a performance, a reckoning disguised as a holiday meal. I walked the private dining room with a notebook in hand, marking adjustments that no guest would consciously notice, but every guest would feel. The floral centerpieces had to be lowered exactly 2 inches, so no one's line of sight was broken across the table. The chandeliers were dimmed by a fraction, to cast light warm enough to flatter, cool enough to keep the room alert. The place settings were measured, the spacing of chairs adjusted, so servers could pass silently between them. My instructions to the staff were firm. Address me as Miss Carter, not chef, not owner, not boss. To them, I am just another guest. Every captain, every back waiter, every sommelier nodded. They understood. Discretion was the backbone of hospitality. We drilled it twice, in pre-service briefings, until I knew there would be no slips. I doubled the staff that night, a safety net disguised as abundance. 2 extra servers shadowed the room, ready to step in if anyone faltered. A second maitre d' hovered in the wings to handle any disturbance discreetly. The backup walk-in freezer was tested, the emergency power checked twice. A portable generator rolled into storage. If a single thing failed, I wanted a contingency ready. But beneath the choreography of preparation, memories of where it all began pulsed like a heartbeat. I remembered the first winter in the truck, when frost crawled across the windshield while I slept, hunched in the driver's seat. I'd wake with my spine aching, start the propane heater that coughed and sputtered more than it burned, then roll up the panel before dawn. Customers lined up at lunch, but by evening, I was back in the commissary kitchen, begging for one more week to pay the rent. I remembered the butcher who almost cut me off when invoices stacked higher than my margins. I had looked him in the eye and said, "Give me 7 days. If I fail, I'll walk away for good." He gave me the week. On the 7th day, I brought him cash in an envelope damp with sweat from my palm. That's how Harbor and Vine began, on trust earned inch by inch, not favors handed down. Every step I took through the dining room reminded me. This was not luck, and it was not a phase. It was survival, carved out of exhaustion, stitched together by refusal to quit. Now, on the night before Thanksgiving, the room stood gleaming, silent, waiting. My staff moved like dancers in rehearsal, their motions precise, their faces calm. I watched them from the mezzanine, feeling a steadiness rise inside me. For the first time in years, the ache of being dismissed did not dominate. Resolve did. When the doors finally opened, I didn't have to imagine their expressions. I saw them. My family walked in with coats draped across arms, voices high with excitement, eyes sweeping across the chandeliers they had praised from afar. My mother's smile widened, her posture straightening as pride surged through her. They admired the table they thought was theirs, the room they thought they owned for the evening. And then they saw it, the 15th place setting. The chatter faltered, eyes darted, and silence spilled just long enough to cut. I stepped forward, calm as stone, my movements unhurried. I pulled out the chair and sat. The first course came out with practiced grace, servers gliding silently between chairs. My family settled into their rhythm of chatter, the performance they knew so well. I kept my posture steady, my napkin folded neatly across my lap, my silence deliberate. It didn't take long for the first jab to land. My Uncle Edward, always eager for a laugh at someone else's expense, leaned back in his chair, his booming voice cutting through the conversation. "So, Emily," he said, swirling his glass of Pinot, "still tinkering with that little food truck hobby? I remember when you parked it near the courthouse, hoping hungry lawyers might stop by. Cute idea." A few polite chuckles followed. My mother's smile tightened. My brother smirked. I didn't flinch. I didn't defend myself. I lifted my glass, sipped, and let the silence hang. Edward frowned when he didn't get the rise he wanted. I gave him nothing. Sometimes silence is sharper than retort. Robert, my brother, seized the gap. He launched into his monologue with the ease of a man used to commanding a courtroom. "My firm just closed a major case," he announced, his tone heavy with pride. "National coverage, multi-million-dollar settlement. The partners said it's one of the most important wins in years. I had to fly to D.C. twice, last month, just to wrap up negotiations." The table hummed with admiration. My mother beamed. Edward raised a glass in salute. Grace offered soft smiles of encouragement. No one asked me a thing. Not about Harbor and Vine. Not about the empire I had built. They carried on as if I were still the invisible girl at the end of the table. It was Edward again who unknowingly opened the door. He leaned forward, curiosity sparking in his eyes. "Tell me, Emily, how did you manage to land this table? Everyone knows Harbor and Vine is impossible on Thanksgiving. I couldn't have booked it months ago if I'd tried." My mother jumped in before I could speak, her voice pitched too high, her laugh brittle. "She knows someone," she said quickly. "Emily's always been resourceful. Called in a favor, didn't you, dear?" Her eyes darted to mine, warning, pleading for me to stay quiet. But I was done with quiet. I set my glass down, the sound of crystal against wood sharper than it should have been. My gaze swept the table, my uncle, my siblings, my mother's pale face. My voice, when it came, was calm and steady. "I didn't call in a favor. I own Harbor and Vine Group." The words detonated in the room. Conversation died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My mother's face drained of color, her napkin shredding under her trembling fingers. Robert's jaw tightened, his pride collapsing into envy, so raw it flickered in his eyes. Grace bowed her head, tears spilling onto her lap. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "We should have asked. I should have asked." Then came the worst cut of all. My father, silent until now, cleared his throat. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I knew," he said softly. "I knew you owned it. I stayed quiet, to keep the peace." The words hit harder than any insult. He had seen me erased for years, and chosen silence, not because he didn't know, because conflict was too heavy for him to carry. And then, an unexpected twist. Edward, the same uncle who had mocked me minutes earlier, raised his glass high, his eyes gleaming with something I hadn't expected. "Remarkable," he declared. "From a food truck to this. That's grit I can admire. Success, I realized, is the one language even he understands." I pushed back my chair. The scrape of wood against the polished floor rang louder than any voice. I stood. Every fork stopped mid-air. For a moment, I thought about leaving. I imagined rising from the table, folding my napkin, and walking out the door, letting them choke on the silence I had carved into the night. But before I could move, Mark, my general manager, slipped close enough for only me to hear. His tone was steady, conspiratorial. "The sharpest blade isn't leaving. It's staying." I lowered myself back into the 15th chair. My presence was enough. No need for shouting, no need for spectacle. Just me, calm and unmovable, while they picked at their courses under the weight of their own silence. The turkey was perfect, the sauces balanced, the wine flowing. But for them, every bite tasted like iron. When dessert was cleared and coffee poured, I placed my palms on the polished wood. My voice was even, unhurried. "The invoice goes to the Whitmore household, not a threat, Not a plea, just fact. My mother's lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. The staff opened the doors, and I rose again, leaving them to finish the feast they had insisted on, now heavy with truths they could no longer bury. In the weeks that followed, the ripples spread further than I expected. My mother, stripped of her perfect facade, didn't send flowers or write long apologies. She showed up, first at a local shelter kitchen, tying her hair back, serving trays of mashed potatoes to strangers who would never know her name. Then at Harbor and Vine itself, arriving quietly on afternoons, watching prep work from a corner, asking questions about inventory, supply chains, and the training of line cooks. She didn't speak of redemption. She simply worked. For the first time in my life, I saw her trying to earn something rather than stage it. Grace changed in her own way. She began to step into conversations when relatives tried to revive old comparisons. When someone mocked my ambition as lucky, she cut them off. Luck doesn't build Michelin stars. It was small, but it mattered. She finally chose a side, not by whispering to me in private, but by standing in front of me when it counted. Robert, of course, played a different game. He dangled offers of legal counsel in casual tones, framing it as protection, but really sniffing for leverage. I smiled politely and drew my circle smaller. Not every bridge deserves reinforcement, and my father, Daniel Carter, the man who had built his survival on silence, did something unexpected. He agreed to counseling with my mother. For the first time in decades, he didn't retreat from conflict. He sat in rooms where words weren't easy, where he had to speak truths instead of bury them. I didn't forgive him immediately, but I noticed. Silence, at last, was no longer his refuge. As for me, I learned something cleaner than victory. I no longer needed their applause, their recognition, or their excuses. What I needed was what I had always built for myself: boundaries, truth, and respect. Success had already been mine. That night had given me something sharper: clarity. When you reclaim your seat without raising your voice, is that revenge, or the first honest meal your family has ever shared? I don't know what history will call it, but I know what it meant for me. Love, if it is real, does not erase responsibility. Forgiveness may come, but only after truth is honored and actions change. Family is not defined by blood or by appearances. It is defined by respect. And finally, I understood. I did not need to fight for a place at their table. I had already built one of my own.